Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Quality Over Quantity, the Changing Face of 2020 Marketing. My name is Jasmine Keys, and I lead the marketing chapter of the Insight Group at Reuters Events. I want to first say thank you to you all for tuning in during this stressful time. You are one of 1,101 registered for the webinar. The COVID-19 crisis has stopped the world in its tracks, so it is encouraging to see so many of you still taking the time to keep up with marketing trends and best practice. We need it now more than ever. The marketing department truly are in the spotlight right now, and our decisions over the next few months can have a tremendous impact, positive or negative, on the way our brand is seen in years to come. Throughout the webinar, we will be discussing how brands are delivering quality content at scale, social efforts that can elevate your brand, and the importance of authenticity during this unprecedented global crisis. To set the scene for the webinar and start the discussion, we're opening a question to the audience via a poll. You'll see this pop up on your screen in just a moment. While you're answering this, I'd like to introduce 4 representatives of the Insight Marketing Summit. These leaders will all be sharing their insight at the 2020 meeting on October 13th and 14th in New York City. Please welcome your panel. Tim Rickards, Marketing Director, Acquisition and Engagement at Charles Schwab. Heidi Gracie, Executive Director, Strategic Marketing and Communications at Arizona State University. And Talia Butchell, VP of Client Management at Tiger Pistol. And finally, I'm joined by Nicholas Zeisler, Principal at Zeisler Consulting and a great friend to the Insight Group and Reuters Events. Now, before we get started, let's take a look at this poll and get a picture of who we have in the audience. So, Nicholas, did you find that, did you think this would be the result?
Yeah, pretty good broad swath over all the different aspects here. It's good to see folks in here, not just from brand marketing, but also we've got content as well, and social strategy, and of course customer insights, which is near and dear to all of our hearts too as well.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to open one more, but keep in mind as you are listening to this webinar who you are online with. As you're asking those questions to the panelists, think about who else is in the group and how they may be interested in those questions as well. So I'm just going to jump in and share the next poll. Now this one, of course, is quite focused on the here and now. What impact has COVID-19 had on your 2020 marketing plan? Is it almost none? It's business as usual, just working from home. Have you adapted, made a few slight changes for now? Is it a significant impact? Our plans under complete reconstruction? Or are you in complete havoc? We're in crisis and not sure what to do next. Let's see how everyone's going. So I can see this coming through. Just a few more moments to put in your results. Nick, what do you think? What do you think the impact is?
I know you weren't going to ask me to answer that personally, right?
No. What do you think our audience will come back with? Because I'm looking at the results right now.
Well, this is a worldwide audience, and certainly people are at different phases of it, having experienced different things, even across the United States, the way it's kind of rippled through society. And some folks are earlier in their experience with it, and therefore perhaps a little not quite as advanced in how they're going to take care and address it. But yeah, let's see.
All right, here we go.
I'd like to talk to that 7%. Almost none, that top 7%, because good for you to have a dynamic organization that's helping with that. But of course, everybody's contending with it to some degree or another, for sure.
Nick, would you like to jump in with the first question for our audience?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jazz, and thanks to everybody joining, and thanks especially to my esteemed colleagues here who are joining us on the call as well. We'll get to everybody here pretty soon, but I wanted to jump in right away with Heidi. Now, Heidi, you've got this tremendous CV and all of this really diverse experience working not just where you are now at Arizona State University within the research and education field, but also you've worked for public and not-for-profit, and you've done a lot of work even in the corporate space. And I wanted to go to you first to get your impression, your thoughts on where we are kind of more long-term. Obviously, there's so much going on right now. Jasmine started with that, but I want to kind of put some framework around it and talk a little more historically. What have you seen kind of over the past few years that's been trending in marketing and how things are changing as we talk about switching from this quantity to quality approach to personalization and so forth? Heidi, I'm interested in what your thoughts are on that.
Well, thanks for the question, Nick. It's a good question. I appreciate it. I'd like to answer that with 2 points of view. One is, you've said, what are some of the trends in marketing and how have things changed? If we take a historical look at things, the customer or marketing funnel or pipeline, whatever you like to call it, has really changed. It's that potential, it's the ways in which potential customers are aware of our products and services, how they make that decision to buy or not to buy. Because before, there used to be that awareness, education, decision support, or relationship management funnel, or other people might use prospects, interest, opportunities, customers model. Whatever model you use, pretty much the models have changed because there are so many now multiple points of entry. And with these multiple points of entries, where the audiences are aware of products and services and they can decide to purchase or not purchase. And then you combine that with the volume of marketing and products and communication out there. We all really do need to be honing in tighter and thinking about quality and engagement over quantity. So that's a historical piece of a trend that I've seen over the last 15, 20 years. Now, if we were to take something a little bit closer to a time frame in the last 2 to 5, I think it's the importance of UX and UI and how important UX and UI is, or how vital they are to product and brand success. So those are 2 trends that I've seen.
Yeah, awesome. I agree, Heidi. I think that it's this interesting paradox, if you will, where you've got so much more going on and your aperture of who are your potential customers is so much broader, but at the same time, each one of those potential customers and the existing customers for that matter are expecting so much more in terms of personalization. And that's, I think, where you get from that quantity to quality that we're talking about. Tim, I wonder what your thoughts are in kind of the financial sector. Are you seeing that same sort of change, broadly speaking, over the last several years?
I think that's relatively accurate. They're able to do much of their upfront research by themselves now. They may come to us fully decided in essence, but there is also a split where sometimes people really are on a longer term multi-decision point journey, and we can see from their activity with us that we're in a beginning decision set and we continue to go through the process till they decide on us. So it does vary, but I think the main thing is you just don't know. I think we have less knowledge about where they are in their journey than before. So if we're going to make an educated guess about where they are, we just need to be really sure of that data and respond accordingly. And again, always just being as helpful as possible, as human as possible through the course of that decision.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that it's just more complicated, and each journey is going to take a more unique path. And with that information that we have, it's incumbent upon us as marketers and as CX folks to personalize people's interactions with our brands, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
As much as your technology allows. I think it's important too to have that deep understanding of, you know, where does your service or product fit in like a desire or an excitement or desirability index. You know, if it's something that's a passion type for someone, or that's driven by motivations of joy and fun, that's one thing. It could also be a service or product that is viewed more as sort of like, you know, dental floss, financial dental floss, or health dental floss, and trying to know where you sit in that spectrum is also, I think, really important, so that you can try and nudge them in the right direction with the right types of prompts and the right types of information.
Great. I'd like to dig deeper into the financial services as dental floss, but we'll come back to that topic. In the meantime, Talia, I think this kind of rolls nicely into the work that Tiger Pistol does, right? Because you're all about that targeting and the marketing in a local sense. What are your thoughts on, over the past several years, what's been going on in this space and how that's affected kind of how we approach this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting hearing the other points of view, as you know, there's a sense that this is more difficult than ever, whereas I actually pose that this is less difficult now to understand consumers. There's more data, and there's more ways that we can collect that data and then use it to target the right consumers effectively. You know, I agree with the concept that brands are now speaking to consumers on more of a kind of human basis. So they're really taking a consumer first mentality. They're adapting their strategy to focus on multi-touch marketing to ensure that their target customers are now seeing their brand everywhere at the right time, or basically all the time. So you know, the biggest changes that I've seen, and I guess it's probably been happening for longer than 3 years, but the biggest changes I've seen is the efficacy of first party data and how that's actually used to target the right consumers effectively.
Great, thanks, Talia. I wonder now if what we can do is, in the context of discussing what Tiger Pistol does and how you service your clients, that, you know, moving it more into, say, the last month or two, when things have gotten so crazy lately, that, to put it mildly, obviously there's a lot going on these days. And I wonder then, in the work that you're doing and from where you're sitting and how you're supporting your clients, what changes are all of this going to bring to the world of marketing? And it sounds like this is just kind of a pivot off the point that you were making about brands becoming more human. So I wonder if you could share more about what it is that y'all are doing there.
Yeah, there is certainly a lot going on these days, which has been very interesting. Just quickly, for those that aren't familiar with Tiger Pistol, our platform is purpose-built to enable brands, SMB resellers, and agencies to publish and report on high-performing Facebook and Instagram ads at unprecedented scale. So we have a platform that our clients use to publish those best practice ads and do that locally. We have a kind of a national to local mindset. And to answer your question, some immediate changes I've seen is brands shifting their messages to quickly adapt to market changes. You would have seen Nike's Play Inside, Play for the World campaign, plus all the brands that are changing their logos to highlight social distancing. I even saw an interesting stat the other day saying that imagery of human contact is down 30% in social media ads. So there's clearly been immediate changes that brands are taking. One thing that I've also been following, and that's probably because I live in the world of social marketing, is that regardless of whether we like it or not, social networking has actually been a pillar of connection during this time. Messaging on Facebook apps has increased more than 50% in the past month, and overall US traffic from Facebook to other websites has also increased by more than 50% week on week. A weird but interesting kind of stat, Facebook usually says that New Year's Eve each year is when they see their highest usage. Every single day since the coronavirus has hit the media, Facebook usage has eclipsed that of New Year's Eve. And so in the midst of kind of this crisis, Facebook has really reinstated their role in keeping us all connected. And I'm sure that all the marketers on the phone or that have dialed in by now have a marketing strategy that includes Facebook advertising. And I'm also sure that the majority of them have scaled back their ad dollars during this time of uncertainty. That's completely normal. But one thing is really clear, people are using Facebook more, and that makes it an extremely meaningful channel for marketers to be on. Another big change is that, you know, local stores, unfortunately, just can't survive during these city lockdowns, and they're going to be greatly impacted in terms of generating revenue. But I actually feel like this has kind of unearthed the true sense of supporting local. There has been an outpouring of local consumers, city mayors and state governors pushing the message to shop local and support local businesses. And whether it be buying a gift card for future use or ordering delivery, there's really ways that we can help. And I actually think that the biggest way that we can help is from brands. For many years, Tiger Pistol has been focused on pushing our clients to take a local approach to social advertising, essentially taking their national strategy and deploying it locally to drive relevance in the eye of the consumer. And we're actually doing a lot of work now to kind of figure out and strategize how companies can navigate the course that's in front of them. Actually, to the credit of my CEO, who uses racetrack analogies, which I'm not really into car racing, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. Navigating through uncertain times is very much like navigating the turn on a racetrack. How you enter the turn, what you do while you're in the turn, and what you do once you're out of it all requires different strategies to help achieve the end goal. And at Tiger Pistol, we're continuing to kind of evaluate this day by day. We're looking at other countries and how they're reacting as well by way of marketing to better equip our clients today and in the future on the right strategy on how to handle each different phase of this pandemic. And of course, I'm open to speaking to anyone that's interested. You can reach me on LinkedIn about that, and happy to strategize with you and your brand.
Talia, that's fantastic. Those are some great points about the leveraging of the information that's out there with so much to kind of make it more personalized, right? And in one sense, it's personalized from the consumer perspective, but also some of that quality over quantity has to do with leveraging the information that we have to dynamically shift in the world where we are. And this is a really good example of that, and we're seeing, I think your examples are good, some of these brands that are able to spin and change when things in the world themselves change. So pivoting on that, I want to talk to Tim about this, because Tim, in the conversation you and I had the other day, we were talking about this very topic and how there's so much data out there, and you've got AI and machine learning and all of these analyses that can be done with, as Talia was just saying, so much data out there, but it turns to finding a way to make it impactful on a way that seems more personal, right? So how do you answer the questions about our customers? How do you see this, Tim, working in real life, leveraging all of the data and information that's out there?
I think it's a really good question. And Talia's right. You know, we can know more than we ever thought possible about the people we're interacting with. I think in real life, it's a subtle mix between how much is actually feasible given a particular company's infrastructure or capabilities. So, you know, the theoretical and the actual, that needs to be a pretty clear distinction, I think, when you're evaluating how you're going to move forward. My experience with using machine learning is that it's an amazing tool that given the right algorithm, the right data inputs, it'll be better than human choice. But the people who create, if you will, the math, right, who write the formulas or contribute to the input, they have to have an understanding, both a database, but also a qualitative understanding of the audiences and how the products and services play to those folks. You know, within the financial realm, people have a complex relationship with their money. It's an emotional relationship. It's an emotional topic. So as a service provider, it's very important to be aware of that emotional connection, and that the expectations people have about what a firm might offer may actually factually outstrip a firm's capabilities if you really think about it, but you need to get as close as you can. So I think it's important to take advantage of the technology, but don't throw away the deep qualitative investigation and understanding, whether that's through, you know, whatever type of research you're doing, message research, if you're going to do user testing, all of that stuff. Use that as the basis to figure out how to best amplify your knowledge and leverage the technology. And when it works, it's amazing. So much more efficient. and drives better results. But there's a combination of, you know, that left and right side of the brain that I think is key to success.
That's great, Tim. I agree, and I love that perspective, the theoretical turning into actual. And really, that's what we're talking about today, is quantity turning that into quality. And it's about, like you said, just leveraging that information, those insights that you have. Heidi, I wonder what your thoughts are on that. How would you apply that in the somewhat more unique way that you approach marketing in the work that you're doing there at ASU?
Well, I dovetail in exactly. I think Tim was spot on. It is about the analysis, but it is also about those deep relationships and understanding, and then how does it actually correlate to our daily lives, particularly when we talk about, you know, Tim had mentioned that money is a very personal, passionate topic. Whether you're talking about research and how this research helps you or a family member, and what does it mean next, or if we talk about education and where are we on the education scale, what do I want to study, what do I want my career to look like, all of those are also passion points. So it's that deep knowledge that's very important that ties back in with the quality of the data.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just the quality, but it's how we're using it, right? And how we're manifesting it.
Exactly.
Your tie out to Tim's point about money being personal and passionate is so right on, especially considering that other things like education now and career development and so forth are also so, you know, so personally important to folks. I want to come back to that in a minute, but first I want to talk to Talia about the changes in what's going on now. I want to hear your thoughts, if you could elaborate on how you see this changing in the current environment, the social efforts that some of your clients at Tiger Pistol are using, and how they're adapting, and maybe use cases and these sorts of things, how folks are leveraging the information that they have and turning that into something that's, to Heidi and Tim's point, more personal and more directly impactful.
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, you know, in following the news, obviously a lot of brands are kind of scaling back ad spend, but it's been interesting to see our clients who have kind of held strong, and there's a reason to hold strong because they're shifting their focus, they're changing their messaging, and they're making it work in the current market. For years, we've been pushing our clients to go from national to local. We see positive ROI through that, and the data keeps on kind of showing that. To give you some examples of what our clients are doing today to kind of react to the current situation, Anheuser-Busch, they're using our technology to support on-premise trade customers globally. You know, originally they would use this to kind of promote foot traffic into these independent retailers of their beer. Now, obviously, we can't promote foot traffic anymore because we are all staying at home. But what these bars are doing in these restaurants, they now do delivery or they're seeking donations. So Anheuser-Busch has created websites. They're going to be using our technology to push that message locally on behalf of these bars and restaurants to drive donations, drive delivery, drive gift card purchases, so that these businesses can actually get through this kind of off the back of Anheuser-Busch, which is pretty special because that really shows a big global brand supporting their really local independent network of on-premise and off-premise trade partners. Another example, so Realogy, who's one of our clients, if you haven't heard of them, you would have heard of the brands that they own, which is Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's International Realty, and Century 21. Their network of 200,000 real estate agents use our platform to run best practice social ads on Facebook. Now, obviously, real estate has been hugely impacted by this. No one's leaving the house. No one wants to go and do open houses. We recognized this shift, and so we kind of prioritized our roadmap effectively to make sure that we released video, so that now real estate agents can promote virtual home tours on Facebook as opposed to driving people to a real open house. And we've seen kind of the agents take that up, and they're already promoting that on Facebook and Instagram, which has been awesome. And another example, my last example, look, I'm not going to mention the name of the retailer because we're still in kind of final discussions, but it is one of the largest kind of craft and arts retailers in the US. They're currently kind of helping people by providing fabric so that consumers can make masks and protective gear and then donate that to hospitals. So what we want to do is really help them take that message from national and distribute it locally. So to kind of get their locations using our platform so that we're driving curbside delivery or even at-home delivery, to be able to kind of support the mission of creating those helpful and much needed items to be donated to hospitals. You know, one thing I will say in summary, if you're a brand and you're not doing a local strategy now, I really urge you to consider it. If you don't know how to do a local strategy, fine, reach out to Tiger Pistol. I'm more than happy to give you an idea. You don't need a bricks and mortar location in order to run a local strategy. All you need to take is a consumer mindset, a local mindset, and push out the relevant message.
Thanks, Talia. Those are great examples. And, you know, as we think about the state in which we are, and it's affecting the entire world, but we hear it in our political leaders, and we hear it on the news as we're watching things unfold, that while it's definitely a global issue, the way we impact it and the way we move forward is locally, right? That's how each of us are going to be able to impact and lessen the effect of this, is how we're working locally. And so I think that work that y'all are doing there is certainly valuable, and it's certainly relevant to what we're seeing going on these days, even as the broader world is impacted by the things we do locally. Before we move on, I did want to, since I have you, Talia, just real quickly touch on a question that Kim puts up on the board, and thanks to everybody for the questions that you're submitting. You had mentioned earlier that there is an increase in Facebook usage of over 50% with all of this going on right now, and she just wanted clarification. Is that B2C or B2B that you're seeing?
So the increase is in consumers using the Facebook family of apps. So remember, Facebook owns WhatsApp, they own Instagram Marketplace. So it's not just the big blue app that they own, but they've seen an increase in usage overall of their platform. Messaging, as you can imagine, has skyrocketed, and that's messaging on the Facebook Messenger app. And also the US traffic that I mentioned has increased onto websites 50% week on week. Now, I can find out more information about that. My understanding is that it's both, it's majoritively B2C, but I'm more than happy to find kind of more information about that and share that with anyone that's interested.
Sure. Thanks, Talia. Now, I want to stick with the questions that we're getting in the chat room as well. And Mark asks, I'm going to open this, and we'll go around robin, everybody, your thoughts on this. So asking about social impact on brand marketing. And what Mark asks is whether that's translating into actual marketing dollars going into social impact content, or people just kind of making donations and so forth, or are we seeing that the brands are investing in this from a marketing perspective? And it may be too early to tell, but I would like the thoughts of the roundtable as we go around. Tim, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you think we're going to see happening?
I do. I know that some companies have helped or ratcheted up help for their employees to participate in charitable activities. I do think that, I mean, in general, I'm not a macroeconomist, nor do I have a PhD in sociology, but it seems that in times of crisis, the social connections that people have mentioned here become more and more important, and people do have a higher urge to reach out. And I think that that's, you know, it's a valuable opportunity, not in an opportunistic fashion. I think just in a real pragmatic and honest fashion. It's a way for companies to show that they care. Most people, I mean, people work at companies, so it's easy to follow the stereotype of the faceless corporation, but you know, people work there, not robots. Well, most of the time, anyway. Real people are working there, and they have social ties and they have empathy. And so I do think that we should see that improving, and I think it's a really wonderful way to do something that's positive and not have that be related to your business.
Great.
And to get out there.
Thanks, Tim. Heidi, what are your thoughts on this? Money where your mouth is, as far as that goes?
Yeah, no, I agree with him completely. We're seeing it here in our state, as well as at the university and with different enterprises that we work alongside. whether it's robotic arms for testing or different elements of this, whether it's in today's situation or before. I think the key thing also today is to look at how we're all engaging with our own teams. You know, I noticed at the beginning of the poll, a lot of people, well, some people said, hey, we're all working remotely now. But also that piece of that social is how are you also then engaging with your marketing teams and key members of products and development and insights that necessarily might not fit into marketing, but how then you're also working with them. It's key to bring that when we're looking outside to consumers, but also take a minute to take a look at your own team and how things are going on now and how you're working and communicating. I think you'll start to see a stronger sense of engagement. I know I am. I think I have 50 people in my living room every morning on a Zoom call. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope you're serving tea at least. Great. Heidi, thanks for that, Talia. I wanted to make sure that I gave you the last word on this question because you were actually giving some examples before as well about how brands are reaching out in times like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just through Tiger Pistol that I'm seeing it. Every night when I turn on the TV, I see a new brand ad where their money is being invested in telling people to stay home. I think there's different ways that organisations are helping, whether it be creating ventilators, creating masks for healthcare workers, or simply spreading the message that people need to stay home. I saw Coca-Cola, I think in Southeast Asia, has put all of their brand spend on hold for advertising, and instead they're reinvesting to kind of have social impact in Southeast Asia. It was in one of the countries, and forgive me, I've forgotten which country it was. But I do think we'll see more and more businesses get involved in that, where businesses can, obviously within reason. And I think, on a human aspect, it has changed the way we perceive the world and the way we communicate. And I think that that'll be long lasting. I don't think it'll just happen during the pandemic. I really feel like this was an opportunity for brands to be more human in their messaging, and that will flow through in years to come.
Yeah, I agree, Talia. And in fact, that kind of calls back again something that Tim was saying as he was answering that question too, which is, hey, we're all global citizens right now. And this is something that, while obviously it can benefit our brands from a marketing perspective to appear as though we care, it's important for us to literally actually do care. And so I think that that's really what you're starting to see out there as well. Wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and address Brad's question that he posed. And thanks, Brad, for this question. By the way, thanks, Mark, for that question about those dollars. Brad has more of an inflow question, and he asks about something that kind of is probably on the front of a lot of folks' minds right now, which is that revenues are down because there's so much less activity out there, especially along certain brands and certain markets. How is it that in a situation where we find ourselves now, where money is certainly going to get tight, how do we emphasize the importance of branding and marketing during a situation like this? And I'd like to start with Tim on that, and I'll hit you up. How is it that we're talking about quality over quantity, and getting a good bang for the buck out of what will be fewer bucks these days? How do we emphasize the importance of that branding and marketing in a time like this, Tim?
I think that I think you emphasize the importance with the discussion around the nature of what's happening in the marketplace. I mean, at its core, when someone purchases your product or your service, that they're making a decision to engage with you, and depending on what that service is, it could be a consumable, which perhaps isn't too deep of a relationship. It could be another type of service which actually has deeper roots within somebody's life. And I think when you think about the brand, that is in essence your voice. That's the way you're trying to translate the thousands of people who help create and support the product and service into a message that can be shared. So anytime there's an economic downturn, there's this discussion around what gets cut first. And any of us who work in marketing are always like, oh, it's always marketing that gets cut first. But I think it is true that that happens, and I think it's a reasonable instinct. But you have to remember, I think one has to remember that marketing is that slow burn discussion and conversation with people. And especially these days, you know, when you think about how brands talk about themselves and the interactivity and democracy of social and the variety of channels, you need to keep that conversation up. Now is when you need your voice more than ever. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, often too, I think in these marketplaces, the difference between products is probably not that big. There's so much parity, right? Well, what's the difference between supplier A and supplier B? It probably boils down to the folks who work at those companies, or the way that people are encouraged to act in those companies. It's their personality. So your brand conversation is a way to take that personality and broadcast it. So I think it's extremely important in times like these.
Yeah, it sounds like, Tim, what you're saying is that there's never not an important time to do it. And when things are up in the air like this, it may even emphasize the need for that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Heidi, what are your thoughts on that?
Better said than me.
Heidi, what do you think about that coming from your perspective?
Yeah, it's how I look at it is marketers will be needed to rekindle the economic growth and recovery. Now that's how a marketer looks at it, and that's how I look at it. However, you know, it's also about how does the rest of your enterprise and how does the executive team take a look at it. And so, Nick, if you don't mind, maybe I could then talk about the importance of, you know, what key marketing talent should be doing now, how they should be looking at things to help be able to drive that conversation, that it's not marketing that's getting cut. Marketing is actually needed to rekindle this economic growth and recovery. Is that okay with you if I kind of go down that lane a little bit?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think that's it kind of leads into some of the questions that we're getting on in the chat room as well, which is, what do you do?
Oh, great.
Where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? And what is the next thing? And what's going to endure as a lasting change? And I think that kind of dovetails in with what you're talking about. And why don't you kick that question off,
Sure.
and then we'll ask Talia and Tim also what they have to say about that.
That sounds fantastic. So when you first held up the panel board, there was people in brand strategy, analytics, insights, digital, different things like that. When we take a long view of these things, of not just what's happening today, but once we come out of this and then moving forward, how are we all going to have a better view of things and be able to add more value to our corporations, our enterprises, whatever the case may be? To me, the universal truth that I've learned over the years is key marketing talent should learn to pivot outside of the usual. So what that means is, if you're in insights and analytics, try to listen in on the brand strategy sessions. If you're in UX and UI and your team sits in product development, engage more with the marketing folks. It's about being comfortable in pivoting and listening to all those different voices and understand where their thinking comes from, because each experience builds on the other, and it gives you a wider lens into the view of the world that makes you better suited to new marketing landscapes. Pretty much marketing is and always has been ripe for reinvention. So this isn't new. What's new is not staying in one area within the marketing world, if you will, whatever that is, you know, UX, UI, insights, brand strategy, digital. Learn a little bit along the whole way, and that makes you more valuable, and that also makes you think in a different fashion. It gets you to think in a different mindset.
Heidi, what an awesome perspective, because if we look at our careers, regardless of what it is, we're all a culmination of all those past experiences, right? And while surely this is a tremendously disruptive time, things are always changing and things are always new, and it's really the successful among us are the ones who embrace those, I think is what you're saying, right? And
exactly.
Yeah, regardless
You
of
know,
how
you don't need to love
traumatic
it.
is.
You don't, right. You don't need to love it, but you do need to be comfortable with it. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you are comfortable with it, I can pretty much guarantee you'll have a successful marketing
Absolutely.
career.
Tim, what are your thoughts on that? Lasting and enduring changes, stuff that we're going to see as a result of this that are going to go into the future.
I mean, I think that that's insightful, and I would agree with it completely. I think there's always that ebb and flow of how much gets adopted and kept. How long is the collective memory? But I think if you were to go back to 2008 to 2010 and studied what happened then and see what was adopted moving forward, you'd find a lot of things that came out of that that were actually quite positive for the marketing. Sometimes I feel like it takes a little bit of a shock for folks to come out of the day-to-day and reassess and reevaluate. And I think it's to Heidi's point, it's the exemplary marketing person who can do that not in the crisis time, who can actually get out of the ordinary and imagine different things. But I think in times like these, it just provides us with this opportunity to reassess and try some new stuff and then capture it and then see what happens when things get better, because they will get better. And I think it's also important to remember as we move through it. Keep your eye on tomorrow and the next week and the next quarter, but remember in a year or two, things will be different, most likely for the better. And how will you be operating at that time as well?
Great perspective, Tim. Yeah, there are these waypoints in history, and how we react to those is what determines how we come through. And that's a great concept, great idea. I love it, Tim. Thanks. Talia, last words before we throw this back over to Jasmine. What are your thoughts on that, and what's going to endure going forward?
It's an interesting question, only because things are changing day by day, as we've seen. So what the US looks like today, it certainly won't look like tomorrow, and it'll look completely different next week. I will part by saying I heard a really good quote from the CEO of Coldwell Banker. His name is Ryan Gorman, and the other day he said, "Relationships built in crisis are ones that last." I think if businesses can remain agile throughout this time and take that into the future, we will all come out of this better. We'll have better relationships with our consumers, with our clients, with ourselves, with our colleagues, and we'll actually kind of push kind of the economy forward by doing so. So they're my parting words.
Fantastic, Talia. I love it. That's great. That agility is what's going to move folks to that quality over the quantity now. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Thanks so much, Talia. Heidi and Tim, fantastic insights. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking your time. Before I send it back to Jazz, I also want to thank everybody who submitted questions, and of course, everybody who attended. This has been fantastic. And thanks so much for the participation of my fellow panelists, and for sure those who dialed in as well. Jazz, why don't you take it back?
Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you to our panelists and our audience. It really has been a fantastic webinar. Now, these speakers, as you know, are all going to be at Reuters Events Insight Marketing Summit in New York on October 13th and 14th in Manhattan. I know October seems like a lifetime away right now, but if you would like to be kept in the loop on who's attending, who's speaking alongside these great leaders, and who's exhibiting, you can pre-register for the info pack today. I'm going to send that around right now. And although the summit is being hosted in person, this pack will also provide details on the virtualization of the summit and other learning opportunities like today's. My name is Jasmine Keys, and I will be sending out the webinar recordings tomorrow morning. If you have any questions about the summit or about any other online learning opportunities that we have available, or would like to get involved, please do reply to that email or ping me a message on LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again. It was fantastic to have you all online. We'll see you next time. Bye.